Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Gloucester City Council meeting for November 14th, 2017. It's council meeting number 2017-021. Just a quick note that this meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting laws. Council Memhard is going to do the moment of silence for us today. And I would ask you to stand and do the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor President Sciolino, for this opportunity to remember my father, Richard Memhard, who passed away Friday, October 6th at the age of 87. My dad served in the CIA, the U.S. Navy, and the Korean War. His financial acumen allowed us to carry on Cape Pond Ice Company through 34 very challenging, difficult years, continuing to serve the fleet as our Gloucester groundfish industry has ebbed. My dad loved Gloucester, its beauty, community, and character. One of his favorite moments was when Tom Ellis allowed my dad to take the wheel of the schooner Thomas E. Lannon and pilot that beautiful schooner on a stiff breeze in Gloucester's outer harbor. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councilor Memhard. Please be seated. Clerk, first item of business.
First item is oral communications.
The public shall have the opportunity at every regularly scheduled meeting to be heard under oral communication on matters not appearing on the agenda. Oral communication shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to city business to appear before the council, state their problem without debate, and the matter shall be referred to the proper agency through the office of the mayor. The resident will be notified within a 2-week period relative to the disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the city council. Persons speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each, and the council president shall not allow the complaints as to individual performance. Is there anybody this evening that wants to speak under oral communication? Please come up. Seeing none. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the presentation on the Cameron's project update from Irene Vogel, Director of Economic Development of North Shore Community Development Coalition.
Thank you, Eileen, for coming this evening and to update us. I'm sure all of the councilors have been getting the same question over and over as we talk about affordable housing. What is happening with the Cameron's project? So can you update this council to see where we're at with that as we move forward on affordable housing? Thank you.
So one thing that's I think might be surprising to people is that as a nonprofit, we work under different circumstances than a for-profit developer does. So for-profit developments can work pretty quickly. Action and North Shore CDC are nonprofits, and our projects are funded through state and federal funding sources, such as low-income tax credits and certain subsidies like affordable housing trust funds, home funds, housing stabilization funding. The way the state of Massachusetts works is that there's one, sometimes two, but usually one funding round per year for all this funding, and they make it sort of a one-stop shopping. So you put in a request for funding only once a year. It is pretty much a given that a project, any affordable housing project, takes usually about 2 funding rounds to get funded, and that's something we build into any timeline that any construction project that we're putting together. Every once in a while, a project gets funded on a first round. Sometimes they take 3 rounds to go through, but it usually takes 2 rounds. And the reason for that is, for example, in the last funding round that we had, we all apply to the Department of Housing and Community Development, that's DHCD. They get all the funding requests in the state once a year. The last request that they got was 100 applicants and they ended up awarding about 30 spots funding. So it's very competitive, but the applicants are experienced applicants that work with the Department of, with DHCD, we work with consultants, so we all know our project's will go through, and we always have conversations in advance before we even start a project with the state to make sure that they're aware our project's coming up. But we usually know it's going to take 1 or 2 rounds, and usually what happens is you get some feedback from the state as to a couple things they might want to see to make your project more competitive in the second round. So to bring that to where we are with Cameron's, is we received our the comprehensive permit in the summer of 2016. So before that, we couldn't go into a funding round. We went into the first funding round last fall. We didn't get funded, which is what we expected. Pretty much we knew that was gonna, we wouldn't get funded because projects that had gone in the year before pretty much were being funded. We will be going into the next funding round. It's the pre-application period is the end of this month, so we're preparing an application, and then we will go into the funding round in the spring. We hope and expect, keep our fingers crossed, that we will be funded. We think that, from conversations we've had with the state, it's a very attractive-looking project to the state. There hasn't been affordable housing in Gloucester. We've talked to them many times about this project, so they know it's coming. So we're pretty hopeful that it will get funded in this next funding round. But what that means is that we will put in our application in February, depending on when it's due. It's usually due February or March. It changes every year. We don't hear until summer. It just takes them, the state, about 6 months to go through all the different applications and make a funding decision. Then it takes about 3 or 4 months before you can actually close on the funding and then start construction. So if we are funded through if we get awarded funding in this next round, we wouldn't be notified that we are awarded until the summer of next year, so that's 2019. However, the good thing is that we get all the funding at that time. It's not like we have to go back for more funding. We don't have to go to other sources. It's one-stop shopping. We get all the funding at that point, and then we could start the construction about 4 months later. So, unfortunately, it's not a quick process, but it is pretty much the timeline we've always known that we were going to have. It all shifted a little bit because we didn't get the permit. We thought we might have gotten it a little earlier, and because we got it a little later, we went into one cycle later than we had expected. But we've known for a couple years that this is pretty much the cycle the cycle that we're in. Last year being the first, this one being the second, hopefully being the time that we're funded. So.
Councilors, do you have any questions? I just have one.
Sure.
What's your competition like? How many other developments are in the queue, and where do you stand in the queue?
Well, we're so last year, as I said, there was 100, and there were 30 that were funded. We had another project that was funded last year. It's actually another one of my projects. So a lot of it has to do with other projects you have in the funding rounds as well. And last year, Cameron's was competing with a project of mine that had been in 2 funding rounds already. So this year, this is the project we're bringing in. So one is we feel that we're competitive because we almost always get something funded. We have so many projects going on, we almost always get an award. So we expect to get an award this year, and this is the project we're putting in. Number 2 is a lot of it depends on if it's a location that has a lot of projects competing or not. Gloucester doesn't have other projects competing for the money, and the state really looks at where these projects are being done, where they're occurring, and they want to fund places that have not received a lot of money in the past. So that makes this one. So this one, even though there could be another, it could be we're one of 100 again, and they could be funding 30 or 40 this year. I'm not really quite sure. we feel pretty comfortable that we have a good shot. It's never a guarantee, but we feel that we have a good shot of being funded this round. So.
And these are state funds?
These are state and federal funds. So it's low-income tax credits is probably the biggest, well, I know it is the biggest award. It's usually about several million. And then there's all sorts of different states and federal subsidies that get awarded all at the same time. So the state puts together, you put in your request for all the funding at one time, and they award you all the funding at one time. And that's why it's a bigger process. That's why it's a one time per year funding cycle, as opposed to several funding cycles throughout the year.
Okay, one last question. People have been asking me, with the move to Washington, and if you're relying on federal funds, what do you feel that the likelihood of, those funds coming through in the next few years?
Right. The thing is that this is more of a concern for projects we have that are in the starting phases. We have projects right now that we're just getting underway, and those are it's really uncertain as to those. This project is in the pipeline. The state, we've had a lot of conversations with DHCD that always has its finger on the pulse of what's happening. There's been a lot of conversations with Congress and the state Senate and stuff like that to ensure these funds are coming through. So we're not concerned about the low-income tax credits. Those are actually not even on the cutting board. The chopping block is a little bit. It would be a little bit scary if we were looking at historic tax credits, which we're not looking at for this project. That's one that's right now pretty iffy. But the low-income tax credits are not. They're not really a questionable source of income right now. And the other state subsidies are already monies that the state has. They're not required. They're not coming in from the federal side. They're already in the state coffers. They're just not awarded yet. But the state has that fund.
Just as that, as council, as your progresses, if you have something to report to the council, so we're on top of what's going on down there. Councilor Gilman.
Thank you, Councilor. Eileen, are there any city councilors or selectmen of different municipalities that would send a letter of support in to kind of add a little bit of oomph into your ability to get this funding? Is that a possibility if we were to put it on a future agenda and just say that in light of the fact that we're here with affordable housing, this council and the mayor's office support, have 100% commitment to this? Is there any
Yes.
is there any benefit to
No,
doing that?
there actually is. One of the things that that the state wants to see is local support. And one of the ways that you've all shown support is by funding the project with some CPA and some affordable housing trust funds. So that's really helpful. But what we do is we try to get letters from your senator, I think Senator Tarr, I believe, and we would definitely want to get the mayor to call and to write DHCD, the people she knows, to push this through. And so a letter of support would be a wonderful thing, but we won't need it probably for another month or two. But I would love to be able to ask for that and be able to hand that in with my application. I think it adds a lot of strength. It makes a project look much more attractive. Thank you. And the only other thing I want to add is just not so much in terms of the funding, but just because I know there's been some concern about, we've been told by neighbors that there's some kids, sometimes there's been some trespassing going on the roof at Cameron's. And so I just wanted people to know that we're very concerned about that. We're very aware of it. We've been talking to both Action and I've had neighbors who have actually filmed what's been going on. I had a contractor out there. We've looked at it. He's given me a proposal, and we're going to be applying for a permit shortly with the city to try to build some kind of a structure, a barrier to keep kids from going on the roof. Because as you can imagine, the roof is quite soft. It's really, certainly no place that any kids or anybody should be up on anyway. But it's particularly dangerous because it's a very soft roof. It's really not very secure, and we don't want anything to happen. So I just want to let you know that is something that people might start to see, hopefully soon, some construction. It's going to be creating a barrier on the roof to keep people off. where they shouldn't be. So,
Thank you very much. Thank you for the update.
thank you.
Bye. Madam Clerk, next item.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Is there any counselors that want to pull any matter off the consent agenda? Counselor Cox.
I would like to withdraw number 2 under counselor orders.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Call for the consent agenda to be accepted as amended. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Counselor Cox? On
I
your
just
withdrawal?
want to withdraw the motion, or the order.
Is there a reason, or is just,
It needs clarifying.
pardon me?
It needs clarifying.
We still have to vote on it. Okay, well, is there a motion to withdraw? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the Budget and Finance Standing Committee report of November 9th.
Council Memard.
We have a relatively brief order from Budget and Finance from our November 9th meeting. There are 3 orders that we will put before you. The first, on a motion by Councilor Orlando and seconded by Councilor Scialino, Budget and Finance voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council accept, under Mass General Law 4453A from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, a fiscal year 2018 State 911 Department Training Grant, an Emergency Medical Dispatch Regulatory Compliance Grant in the amount of $120,952.75. There is no match for this grant. The grant period is from October 2nd, 2017 through June 30th, 2018, and I so move.
Moved and seconded. Is there a narrative?
Just briefly, several weeks ago, the council voted to permit the police department to make a grant application for an annual award from the state 911 department for the purpose of training police personnel in emergency medical dispatch and regulatory compliance. The state 911 department has now been awarded this $120,000, and there's no match.
Councilors, any questions? Council discussion. Simple majority. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, Council Memard.
Our second item this evening is on a motion made by Councilor Orlando, seconded by Councilor Scialino. Budget and Finance voted unanimously to recommend that our City Council, under Mass General Law 4453A, accept a private grant of $330,000 at a rate of $110,000 per year from the Peter and Elizabeth C. Tower Foundation for the purpose of exclusively supporting, through the City of Gloucester, Massachusetts, Department of Health and Healthy Gloucester Collaborative, providing financial support to move substance abuse prevention efforts forward across the Cape Ann and North Shore region and to reduce youth substance abuse, promote healthy development. There is no local grant for this no local match for this grant, and the grant period is November 1st, 2017 through October 31st, 2020. And I so move.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there a narrative, Councilor?
Briefly, this $330,000 grant from the Peter and Elizabeth Tower Foundation is a regional grant focused on youth substance abuse. The Health Department has been awarded a smaller Tower Foundation grant previously, and this current grant is for a 3-year period with funding pegged at $110,000 per year. The grant partially funds salaries, and there's a large research evaluation grant component which supplements our department's Mass Department of Health, public health grants based on evidence-based programming.
Questions? Comments? Simple majority. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, Councilor.
And our third and final item tonight from Budget and Finance is a motion by Councilor Orlando, seconded by Councilor Scialino, unanimously recommending that our City Council approve 2018 SA1 for $7,500 from account as specified Capital Project Stabilization Fund, transfers to trust funds to the account as specified Capital Project Stabilization Fund preschool feasibility study for the purpose of funding a preschool feasibility study for the location of a city preschool, and I so move.
Do you have a narrative?
Briefly, this money is being requested to move from our Capital Project Stabilization Fund in order to fund a feasibility study for the purpose of exploring 2 potential locations to move our successful city preschool program to. The locations being considered are either the O'Malley Innovation Middle School or the Gloucester High School, and in both cases, each school appears to have ample square footage to meet all guidelines to house a preschool. However, a study will be necessary to make that final determination. Our lease at the Blackburn Drive number 2, currently housing the city's school department, administrative offices, and preschool, will expire in September 2018.
Any questions, Councilor? Mr. Destino, can you just give a quick overview of what the administration is aiming at on this down the road?
Thank you, Mr. President. Jim Destino, the Mayor's Office. I think the Chairman of BNF outlined it pretty well. I think you're all well aware that the lease is up on our preschool and administration building up at 2 Blackburn. Because of the availability in some of our other schools, we're looking at housing the preschool in one of those other buildings, and we're looking at the feasibility to do so. If you remember, and I'm sure again that you're all aware, the enrollment in the schools is down. High school used to have 1,380 students. It now has 850 students. There are whole sections that are not being used. Doesn't make sense not to look at those schools for when we need available space instead of renting. Same as at the O'Malley Innovation School. Let me put it to you this way. We just built a $60,000 school in West Parish to house 400 students. The O'Malley has 600 students and 200,000 square feet. So they also have room there. That school's a little bit older. The wing might be a little bit more expensive to renovate. So we're taking a small amount of money to have our in-house architect look at the feasibility of which space would be best suited for not only the early education students, but for the parents when it comes to drop-off and all the grounds. So we're hoping to come up with some answers soon on that, because the lease is running. Our only other option would be to go back out to RFP, and that would mean probably even paying higher rent than we already are. If you look at the amount of money we pay for that 2 Blackburn site, that preschool and administration building is very expensive. So we're just looking to find a more economical way to do it.
Councilors, any questions? Councilor Orlando?
Just a comment. I'd like to applaud you guys for doing this. I think that $330,000 a year, or whatever the rent is for Blackburn, is astronomical. If we can use space we already have, that should be something we do on a lot of different levels and a lot of different departments. So kudos to you guys for looking at that.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor Gilman?
Mr. Destino, I have a question just in terms of how the YMCA preschool that will hopefully be coming forward, how that might affect the enrollment of the school preschool, even though the school preschool offers certain services that I'm sure the YMCA preschool is not going to offer. But have we looked in that also to kind of plan ahead in terms of possible reduction of headcount for the preschool run by the school?
Yeah, that's a good question, Counselor, and we are looking at that, as well as, the Head Start program at Pathways, which is another option for, some of the children, for, preschool children. We're not sure how to evaluate how many more, if it's a little premature to say that preschool is going to be built up at the Y right now. If the council does, approve that, that will be taken into our consideration when we make our decision on the size of the, the facility that we build. So.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Destino. Since we're moving money around from the stabilization fund, we need to do a roll call vote.
Counselor Orlando? Yes. Counselor Shalino?
Yes.
Counselor Cox?
Yes.
Counselor Gilman?
Yes.
Counselor LeBlanc?
Yes.
Counselor Lombard?
Yes.
Counselor Memhard?
Yes.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara? The motion passes 9-0 for SA 2018 SA1 in the amount of $7,500 for the purpose of funding a feasibility study for a preschool location to the counts specified.
Great. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Next order is the Plan and Development Standing Committee of November 8th.
Council Lumber.
Yes, we have nothing for the council at this time.
Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Is the Ordinance and Administration Standing Committee report of November 6th.
Council LeBlanc.
We also have nothing to report tonight. We have a few scheduled public hearings.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you call the next order of business?
Next order of business, the first public hearing, 2017-63, tax classification in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, in Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Section 2-26, to determine the percentage of the local tax levy for the fiscal year 2018 to be borne by each class of real and personal property.
Okay, like we did last year, I'm going to invite Nancy Pappas up and just to give us some background on the numbers before we open up the public hearing. Nancy is not for or against. She is just going to give us the facts the way they are. Thank you, Nancy. You always do such a great job.
Good evening. Nancy Pappas, Principal Assessor. There are 4 options to consider as part of the tax classification process, none of which will change the total tax levy. A residential factor must be adopted, which determines the share of the tax levy that each class of property will bear. An open space discount, a residential exemption, and a small commercial exemption may also be considered. However, there is no property classified as open space, and the mayor has not chosen to adopt either the residential or small commercial exemption. So the focus is on determining whether you want to shift a portion of the tax levy from one class of property to another. The fiscal 18 assessed values were approved by the Department of Revenue on October 12th. And on page 4, you can see the total value of each class of property. The residential class makes up 89.87% this year, and the CIP 10.13%. The taxable value of the city increased 5.68% from fiscal 17. And based on our sales analysis, the residential class as a whole increased 5.23%. Property types within the residential class saw market increases between 3.5% and 7%. The commercial and industrial classes increased 3.5% and 3.9%. Page 5 shows the parcel count and the assessed values of each class from 2005 to the present. Page 6 shows the historic shift factors that have been adopted over the years, and fiscal 17 is noted at the bottom of the page, which was a 1.03 shift. That resulted in a residential tax rate of $13.19 and a commercial tax rate of $13.63. Page 7 illustrates the calculation of the maximum allowable levy. It starts with the levy limit from fiscal 17. Added to that is the Prop 2.5 increase and new growth, which results in the fiscal 18 levy limit. To that is added the Poles Hill debt exclusion, CSO debt exclusion, and the water debt exclusion. The fiscal 18 maximum allowable levy divided by the total value of all parcels in the city results in a tax rate at a factor of 1 of 12.97 for fiscal 18. Factor of 1, as you know, results in the same tax rate for all classes of property. Any factor other than 1 will shift a portion of the levy to a different class. Page 8 shows the approximate tax rates that result from the various shifts to the CIP class. The maximum shift allowed by the state is 1.5. Page 9 shows a comparison of levies by class at various shift factors. The tax rates are approximate and rounded so as not to exceed the maximum allowable levy. And in the far right-hand column, you can see the difference in the levy that each class will bring in after the shift. So at last year's 1.03 factor, you can see what's coming out of the residential in the far right and what's being added in terms of what the CIP class will raise. So the CIP class in that scenario is bringing in an additional 3% than they would have brought in at a factor of 1. Page 10 shows the change in tax dollars at various shifts. You can see the savings to the residential taxpayer and the increase in tax dollars to be paid for the CIP taxpayer. The average assessed single-family home for fiscal 18 is $556,434, which is closest to the $500,000 property value. So at last year's shift of 1.03, the residential taxpayer would be saving $20, while the CIP taxpayer pays an additional $195. And in that same column, if it were the maximum shift of the 1.5, you can see the difference where the residential taxpayer is saving $365 and CIP taxpayer is paying an additional $3,245. The remainder of the packet covers the open space discount, the residential exemption, and the small commercial exemption, which are not viable options for this year. So if you have any questions, whether it's about the exemptions or anything else in the packet, I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Destino, do you have something to say?
Yes. Excuse me, Nance. Jim Destino again, Mayor's Office. I just wanted to add to the administration's presentation on tax classification that the mayor has recommended a shift of 1.03. We recommended that to BNF, and I just wanted to let the full council make them aware that we've made a recommendation and the mayor has made a recommendation, and that shift was the same as last year. If you remember, on one of the pages, it looked at the historical shift throughout the years. We were at 1.06 for 11 years. Last year was the first year we cut that in half to 1.03. The mayor is recommending it stay at 1.03.
Thank you. Any questions for Nancy? We're going to come back to a questions period anyway, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, I'm going to open up the public hearing. And I'm going to ask anybody that wants to speak in favor to come up. Not seeing any. Is there anybody that wants to speak in opposition? Please come up.
Ken Reel, CEO, Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce. I'm speaking in favor of the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation for 1.0. Good evening, Mr. President and City Councilors, and thank you for this public forum on such an important topic affecting the future of our great region. I'll begin by saying that the Cape Ann Chamber and our 900 business members are in full support of the Budget and Finance Committee's decision to eliminate the higher business tax rate. The CIP factor of 1.03 stands at its lowest level since the city removed the factor in 1985, and its effect is small on individual homeowners, about half a tank of gas, as you just heard, for the $500,000 property owner, and about 10 times that for an equivalent business owner. To be clear, we fully appreciate that any increase in taxes on residents may represent a financial hardship to some, especially those on a fixed income. The elimination of this tax is less about a financial benefit to the business community and much more about the message it sends to all businesses, especially those that may look to relocate here, that Gloucester is business friendly and that we are encouraging business growth. With new business comes new jobs, new residents, broader tax base, and an increase in tax revenue, enabling the entire community to prosper. We'll hear from some tonight that removal of this tax factor will not help us attract new businesses. We strongly disagree. Indeed, we can say that with certainty that removal of the factor will give us a strong selling point for encouraging new business to relocate here. Gloucester's overall economic condition is mixed and continues to be at a critical crossroads with the excitement and significant investment and success of the Beauport Hotel and the potential of a major new development at the Fuller School site. On the other hand, it remains a challenge to attract new medium and large-sized businesses to the area. Our wharves need significant maintenance and repair. We have a lot of waterfront property that is underutilized, and we have been impacted by the losses of Gloucester Seafood Processing and Gloucester Engineering. As we discuss this small but significant change, we ask you to seriously consider 4 main points. First and foremost, because of the severe fishing regulations, the city's business base has decreased an alarming 30%, from 15 to 10% over the past 25 years. And total home port landings are down over 30%, about $8 million, just over the 3-year period from 2010 to 2013. Similarly, our business valuation base continues to decline. Over the past 5 years, it has decreased 10%, from 11.2 to 10.13%. None of our North Shore neighboring cities have our unique legacy as the nation's oldest working harbor, still highly relevant today as ranking generally within the top 15 of commercial port seafood landings in the country. However, municipalities just 10 miles away, like Beverly, Danvers, Peabody, and Lynn, all have larger business-based percentages and are growing. Second, Gloucester remains and will always be a fishing community, but the business mix is changing. The visitor-based economy is growing and has led to substantial new investment like the Beauport Hotel, which in turn has significantly added to the tax base. Our unemployment rates remain low, but a downside for this type of economy is that many of our jobs are seasonal. Third, in complicating matters, as reported by the UMass Donahue Institute, is a projection of substantial population decline, about 15% over the next 20 years. The primary reason for this is straightforward. We are a population dominated by baby boomers, and our next generation is simply fewer in number. Further, we are not expecting population growth to increases in immigrant populations as are our neighbors in Lynn, Haverhill, and Lawrence. And finally, our population challenge, especially attracting young families, is made more difficult by housing affordability. Our housing prices are among the highest of any city on the North Shore, with the current median Gloucester home price over $400,000. We are seeing a direct result of this and the general lack of high-paying jobs in our schools, where the population has declined by more than 25% over the past 20 years. On the bright side, Gloucester has so much to offer as an incredibly beautiful and desirable place to work, live, and play. We are encouraged by the very fact that we are here tonight talking about these issues as part of a strong collaboration comprised of the city, the Chamber, and our business affiliates, local universities, and nonprofits. We are working together to turn these issues into opportunities for growth and regional prosperity. We are working to broaden our business base by expanding our core maritime-related businesses, extending our visitor season through the entire year, and seeking to attract more traditional service, engineering, and manufacturing businesses. We ask that you help us in this mission and vote to adopt the Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation and eliminate entirely the remaining CIP tax rate differential. Not only is this a core element of an overall program for encouraging business growth and prosperity for Gloucester, but now at the 1.03 level, this differential more represents an unnecessary vestige from the past than it does a savings to our residents. The city's tax rate will be much more favorably impacted by expanding our business base than by relying on increases in housing pricing, and we are asking for your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in opposition? Please come up. State your name and address, please.
Robert Gillis, 31 Saywood Street. Thank you. First, I want to thank the Budget and Finance Committee for the unanimous recommendation to reduce the tax classification rate to 1.0. In my mind, we're that close to fairness, and this is really a fairness issue. I think it's simply, we have an opportunity here to treat both constituencies fairly, and we're very close to that. And I would appreciate your consideration for reducing the tax rate down to 1.0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in opposition?
Ruth Pino, 82 Wheeler Street in Gloucester. So every year I say the same thing. I am a past president of the Chamber of Commerce, but I'm here as a homeowner because, as Bob Gillis says every year, it's all about fairness. If we had a 60-40, 60 residential and 40% commercial, this would make more sense. But to spread the savings across 90% of the properties in Gloucester makes no sense. So I'm in that category where this will save me $20 if you stay at the 1.03. I would rather give the $195 back to the business to reinvest into their business. So maybe $195 is not a lot of money over 12 months, but it's $195 versus my $20. That's how I want you to see this number. It's $20 savings to me. I would rather reinvest it in the business community than charge them an extra $195. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in opposition? Seeing none, are there any communications?
There are none.
No communications. Councilor questions? Councilor Gilman.
So I'd like to ask a question of Nancy, if that's okay.
Please, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. So Ken mentioned some other surrounding communities in terms of what their share is, distribution of residential to commercial. Can you just give us a kind of a quick and dirty update of what some of the neighboring communities, what their distribution is in terms of residential versus commercial industrial?
In terms of the CIP percentage, or
Yes.
what they choose to shift? In terms of the percentage?
In terms of which one is higher, I guess. So yes.
We did take from the Department of Revenue's website a snapshot basically of all the communities in the municipality. Of the 351, 108 choose to shift. And if you look at Beverly and Salem, for instance, which are close by, Beverly has a 13.96% CIP. They also tend to shift at the high end, which is a 1.67 last year. Salem has 16.37 for a CIP base, and they shift to the 1.65. And then you also have municipalities such as Newburyport, which has a 13% CIP, but they have a factor of 1. Ipswich is also close to ours percentage-wise, a 10.81 CIP, and they are at a factor of 1. So it tends to vary widely between communities.
I have a question for Nancy. Is it not true that we have the lowest rate right now?
The shift
The
of the
1.03.
1.03 is the lowest in the state
In the
for
whole state.
fiscal 17. Fiscal 18 numbers, of course, aren't fully in at this point.
Right. Anybody else? All right, why don't we start, Councilor Cox?
How many don't shift?
So only 108 of the 351 are shifting, so the balance are not.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
108 of 351 communities choose to shift.
Thank you.
Councilor Orlando.
And each year that we take this vote, we are taking the vote to shift. We're always starting at 1.0, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else for questions for Nancy? Thank you, Nancy. Any other questions for anybody else? Okay, close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Yes, as several have referenced, the Budget and Finance Committee, on a motion by Councilor Orlando and seconded by Councilor Scialino, voted unanimously to adopt a residential tax classification factor of 1.00 for fiscal year 2018, and I so move.
Okay, so moved and seconded on the motion. Steve?
I'd like to make a motion to amend it to 1.03, please.
Okay.
I'll second.
A motion has been made to amend the main motion to 1.03. It's been moved and seconded. Why don't we just do, so we can keep it all straight, a roll call on this. Now, this is not on the main motion. This is the amended motion, to amend the motion, okay? We're going to vote again on the, if this passes. The main motion now on the table right now is 1.00. There's been a motion that's made for 1.03. So that's what's on the table now, to amend the motion. Pardon me?
Yeah, discussion.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes. So as we know, we've had a shift over the past year from 1.06 to 1.03, and in the previous 11, 12 years, it stayed at 1.06. I know we have a working class council up here, and it's nice to see that, trying to even off between the homeowners and the businesses. But at this point, I think with the way the residents have responded to me that I have asked, they've asked me to keep it the same at the 1.03. So I'm making that request tonight.
Okay, anybody else on the motion? Councilor Orlando first, and then Councilor Lundberg.
Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate something I asked a minute ago, and I asked it for a reason. Every single year, we decide whether or not we're going to shift it. If we did nothing, it would be even, 1.0 to 1.0. So that means that every year for the past however many years, a couple of, 20 years or whatever it's been, we've decided to shift more of the burden onto our commercial tax base, which I don't support, and here's why. A lot of people like to compare us to other communities like Beverly and Salem and Danvers and the like. We have a huge amount of problems with that comparison because we're an island and they're not. We're not at the convergence of major highways. There's expenses related to being in Gloucester that businesses don't have in other communities. So we have to make it as attractive as possible in other ways, and I think this is just one of those ways that we can do it. So my concern here is this. We already, and this doesn't play into the tax classification obviously, but we have high water and sewer rates. We have other obstacles for businesses. I think in order to make it as attractive as possible, we shouldn't be adding burden to businesses. So for that reason, I would not support shifting at all. I think the Budget and Finance Subcommittee has it correct when we say, let's go to 1.0 to 1.0. It's as even and as fair as it gets for all constituents on the commercial and on the residential side. And at that point, we are signaling to the rest of the Commonwealth and, come to Gloucester, do some business here, and we're going to work our hardest to make your life as easy as possible, which in turn, the tide raises all ships. We have more revenues coming in, which means our tax rate goes down, which is actually another piece of this puzzle. So 2 straight years now when we've taken this vote, we've actually had some good news. Our tax rate overall is way down. We're down again 24 to 26 cents, I believe it is, per thousand on both commercial and residential, down to $12.97 per thousand. Last year we were at $13.24 or 25 per thousand. So, and while those two things are not always going to match up that way, we have an opportunity here where even if we take this shift, even if we don't shift, everyone's rate is down, everybody's. So for those reasons, I do not support a shift to 1.03.
Thank you. Councilor Lundberg.
Yes, I'd just like to comment that every year when we have this debate, The business interests say that they know with absolute certainty that the equalization of the tax classification would increase business. The administration generally says with absolute certainty they know that that's not a factor, that the other factors of a good workforce and good schools are more important than that. So, and there's no objective evidence on either side. So it comes down to counselors having to decide what is an equitable arrangement in our city. And I think that for years and years we have thought it equitable to shift slightly the tax burden over toward the business community as opposed to the residents. And I think that's a message that we want to send, and so I will be supporting Councillor LeBlanc's amendment.
Anybody else? Council Gilman. I'm sorry. Council Cox.
I think a big part of this is what we're missing is the FY17 tax rate last year at 1% was 13.24. This year it's 12.97, down 27 cents. If you really go in and analyze it deeper, you'll see that in 2008 we had a commercial base of 593. And 8, 9, 10, until 17, it started to decline. So our commercial base in 2017 was 570, and in 18, down again to 566. So between 17 and 18, we've lost 4 businesses and 1 industrial property, and our personal property tax went down 29. Personal property tax, there's many reasons for that. We collect personal property on secondary homes in the state of Massachusetts. It's considered a luxury to have a second home, so your contents of your second home are taxed. So it could mean that more people are making it their primary home in Gloucester. There's just several factors. Personal property is also the contents of your business. So as businesses go away, the contents go away. So in my opinion, and I'm just one, FY18's residential tax rate went down 27%, or I'm sorry, 27 cents. And from 17 to 18, our commercial, industrial, and personal property tax went down as well. Is it a direct correlation with the number of businesses going down and our shift? I don't think so. But everything's going down. For an average house price of roughly $500,000, the cost to the residential homeowner for a year is $20, whereas the cost to the business is upwards of $300, and that's per business per house. I don't think a $20 savings for a residential is enough to maintain the shift. I will not be supporting the motion tonight.
Council Gilman.
So Nancy Pappas was good enough to get me some of the numbers of our mixed use and commercial. I'm a ward councilor, so it's important for me to focus on my constituents. Obviously, the whole city is extremely important to me, but so I got information on Ward 4. And 406 Washington Street is owned by a landlord, and it is rented. And that would be going up $73. 1 Holly Street, which is a Willow Rest, again, it's owned by a landlord and rented to a tenant. That would be going up $105. And then we have the Cove Cafe at 1080 Washington Street. That would be going up $79. And then a couple of big, larger commercial properties at Osmond Babson Road. One would be going up $208, the other one $340. And in the meantime, I think we all know that the average property around $500 would be going down $20. The issue that I have is because my ward is primarily residential, I'm talking to people all the time about affordable housing, about how they're going to be able to stay in Gloucester. They're on fixed incomes. They're learning that their potholes aren't going to be repaired. They're learning that culverts aren't going to be repaired because of private ways, and that's our ordinance, and that's our budget. And but those are the types of issues that I'm dealing with in terms of city services and how people feel. So I will be supporting the amended motion that Councilor LeBlanc met for those reasons. I really feel like I need to support the residents of my ward. Thank you.
Anybody else? I just need to clarify a couple things. You know, we heard some news tonight that our commercial tax base has gone down the past, 10, 15 years from 20%, 15%, now we're down to 10%. And somebody once said that a form of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And what has this tax classification really done for the city of Gloucester? You can't beat those numbers. We're down to 10%. And how does that hurt the homeowner? And that's the important thing. Is that when we develop and attract more commercial tax rates, we don't do any city services. They don't have children that they're going to put in the schools. And for every dollar that we collect on a commercial tax rate is $1. And when we do that for the residential, it's not because of all the expenses that are there. I'm not going to sit here and say that your taxes are going to go down, but if we increase the commercial, it'll offset any increases in the residential. The two work hand in hand, and we're shrinking our commercial tax base, and it's not a good thing for a community to do. And there is a point where it's so minuscule, and this is the opportunity, this is the time to make it parity, to get past that when we talk to different organizations that are coming into town, that we don't have this tax classification split, where we tell a commercial person coming into town, by the way, you're going to pay more taxes, but we're not going to give you any services. Now, how's that resonate with a lot of people? Would you go for something like that? Or would you go for something in Peabody or Beverly where their commercial rate is a lot higher, but at least they're making it and it's busier? So that's a dilemma, and I've been in the chamber, and I've been preaching it since I've been a city councilor, that in order to stabilize residential, you have to increase commercial. And at the rate we're going, I don't see that happening unless we really do this tonight. It's minuscule. There's not going to be a lot of pain at all, and I think it'll be parity for everybody, and it'll be a good sign of goodwill that Gloucester is ready to do business and create jobs and create property taxes. Just a small note, people keep on talking about the Beauport. We're collecting $110,000 worth of real estate taxes out of Beauport. It's probably created around 300 jobs. We do personal property tax. We do a meals tax. We do an excise tax. They pay $65,000 off of all their water and sewer, which all goes to stabilize the residential tax rate. That's what we need more of. And what do we give for them for services? Zilch. We don't give them trash. We don't give them anything else. So I will not be supporting the Councilor LeBlanc's amendment. Anybody else? Okay. Roll call vote.
This is on the amendment.
On the amendment only.
On the amendment, okay.
To amend the motion.
To a factor of 1.03, right?
Right.
Okay. Counselor Orlando? No. Counselor Shalino?
No.
Counselor Cox?
No.
Counselor Gilman?
Yes.
Counselor LeBlanc.
Yes.
Counselor Lombard.
Yes.
Counselor Memhard.
No.
Counselor Nolan.
No.
Counselor O'Hara.
No.
Okay. The motion for the amendment fails on a vote of 6-3.
Okay, now we're back to the original motion of 1.00. Any discussion on that, folks? Councilor Orlando?
We tried to do this last year. The council voted 1.0, and the administration vetoed it at the time, and we ended up coming to a compromise at 1.03.
Counselor?
Yeah.
We don't have that in front of us. What we have in front of us is a motion of 1.00.
Yeah.
And what comes after that, we'll find out at the next city council meeting.
I'm just commenting that I think the right move here is 1.0 to 1.0, so I urge all the councilors to vote in favor of that.
1.00.
1.0, yep.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Orlando.
Yes.
Counselor Schlino.
Yes.
Counselor Cox.
Yes.
Counselor Gilman.
No.
Counselor LeBlanc.
No.
Counselor Lombard.
No.
Counselor Memhard.
Yes.
Counselor Nolan.
No.
Counselor O'Hara.
Yes.
Okay. The motion to adopt a residential tax classification factor of 1.0 for fiscal year 2018 passes on a 5-4 vote.
Okey doke. I am going to call a 5-minute recess.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda.
Next item is public hearing 2017-64 to amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 8, Fire Prevention and Protection by adding Section 8.6 entitled Use of Sky Lanterns.
Okay. I will open up the public hearing. Is there anybody to speak in favor of this? Seeing none, is there anybody to speak in opposition? Seeing none, are there any communications?
There are none.
Councilors, do you have any questions? Okay, nothing going. Close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
There is. Ordinance and Administration voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council amend GCO Chapter 8, Fire Prevention and Protection by adding Section 8.6 entitled Use of Sky Lanterns as follows. Sky lanterns using an open flame or any similar object or device are not permitted in the City of Gloucester, Section .8-7-8-14, reserved. And I so move.
Do you have a narrative?
I'll speak on it a little bit if Councilor Gilman, you want to? Sure, go for it.
Thank you, through the chair. So this was a motion in my ward, or an ordinance that came through from an order that came through from my ward. The issue is that the sky lanterns, although lovely, are getting shot off the beach, and several times they were landing in neighborhoods in Raleigh Shore Road. And one time they were all still burning when they landed, so the fire department actually had to come to make sure that they weren't going to start a fire. So the issue is that both they're litter and they are an open flame, and when it's dry, sometimes they continue to burn. So a resident who lives on Washington Street brought this forward, and the police chief, the fire chief, Chief Smith, was very supportive of this, and he wanted this to be consistent with the state fire regulations. So by adding this to our current local ordinance, we will be consistent with the state. So I will be supporting this motion, and I hope my fellow councilors do the same. Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, I'm also in agreement with Councilor Gilman on this, and I think it's another, I've been speaking about insanity tonight. My second one is, and when there is a drought, here we are sending up these balloons, I know, that are on fire, and I've seen them go off the water, and it looks pretty nice, but then the wind shifts and they go someplace else. So it's a dangerous precedent, and I think that's something we need to do on the advice of the fire chief, just to eliminate them. We don't need them, and just to protect our homes and our woodlands, and not have to deal with a fire source. We already have too many fire sources as it is. So I will be supporting this tonight. We just need a simple majority. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Next item is public hearing 2016-65 to amend the Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 9, Trash, Recycle, and Litter, Section 9.12, Reserve, by adding a new Article 2, Plastic Bags, amend Section 9.13, Reserve, by adding a new Section 9.13, Requirements, amend Section 9.14, Reserve, by adding a new Section 9.14, Enforcement and Penalties, amend Section 9.15, Reserve, by adding a new Section 9.15, Exemptions, and amend Section 9.16, Reserve, by adding a new Section 9.16, Effective Dates regarding prohibition of plastic checkout bags.
Thank you. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, I will recuse myself from any participation in the public hearing about to be opened, as there is an appearance of conflict of interest. Please, and I will hand the gavel over to Vice President LeBlanc, and I will give him the seat.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. And so I'm going to make a couple statements real quick. So if we have the people in favor, if we have a lead speaker, if they want to take charge, you'll have up to 15 minutes to speak. Also, the people in opposition, if you'd like to speak, pick one person from the group in opposition to take up the main part. It would make things flow a little bit easier. And also, after the main speakers speak, we're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes. Also, if you have turned in a letter to the clerk's office or to one of us and it's on the record, I'm going to ask you not to come up and speak tonight because we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. So if you have written a letter in and it's on the record, we ask that your name will be read into the record, that whether you're for or against it, just to kind of keep this, get us out of here at a certain hour instead of all night. Thank you. Yes.
Ainsley Smith, 14 Pine Street, on behalf of the Gloucester Clean City Commission. Good evening, councilors, and thank you again for your time. On behalf of the Clean City Commission, I'll be using the next few minutes to recap and address questions and concerns that were raised at the last public hearing on this ordinance and share our progress on funding and outreach opportunities. In September, this auditorium was full of residents eager to see this legislation succeed. 20 people stood at the podium to share their support for this ordinance, and another 23 people wrote into the clerk's office with their supportive statements. Despite a misleading statement that one councilor recently gave when recapping this meeting, only one public comment was given from a non-resident. Supportive comments came from retail business owners, a whale watch manager involved in one of the city's largest tourism draws, a professional marine biologist working for a world-renowned conservation organization, which we are fortunate to have based in Gloucester, middle school and high school aged children, the future of our city, working young professional adults, parents, and older adults. Again, 19 of the 20 oral comments came from Gloucester residents. A Change.org petition was circulated through social media and collected, as of last week, 668 signatures from Gloucester residents and 561 signatures from neighbors and tourists who support this ordinance. A hard copy of the same petition was also circulated by volunteers and seaside sustainability interns at the Cape Ann Farmers Market and while reaching out to local businesses. The hard copy petition received 495 signatures from Gloucester residents and our neighbors. As requested at the last public hearing, the ordinance was brought back to Ordinance and Administrative Committee for editing. The current version of the text now clarifies all areas of concern raised, specifically that thin produce bags and meat bags are permitted to address concerns of cross-contamination of groceries, and clarifies that newspaper and dry cleaning bags will be permitted to protect those items. The current text also now specifies that the ordinance applies to all retail, for-profit businesses only, and specifically includes the requested exemption for the annual post-service open-door food drive to use plastic bags. Additionally, the fines and the role of the building inspector in enforcing this ordinance were clarified and cleared with General Counsel. While we've been waiting for today's hearing to come up, the city of Wakefield recently passed their bag ordinance, making them the 56th Massachusetts municipality to do so. I'd like to take the next few minutes to address the concerns that were raised of those who oppose this ordinance. One commenter in September said that it is not the role of city council or government to implement bans, to which we disagree. The role of the government, specifically at the local level, is to hear concerns of its citizens and act accordingly. Citizens concerned with the environmental impacts of plastic bags brought this ordinance to Councillor Cox. Our local government often prescribes regulations based on hearing the concerns of its citizens. Sky lanterns, adjusting speed limits, zoning and building regulations, developing safe traffic patterns. We believe it is the most appropriate that this ordinance is done at a local level of government by individuals directly affected by the problem. Regarding Massachusetts' waste-to-energy program, one commenter said that plastic bags can be disposed of in our regular trash, which is burned in an incinerator that makes electricity without fossil fuels and emits clean exhaust. The same commenter also said that waste-to-energy lowers our carbon footprint and has clean emissions. Plastic bags are made of ethylene, which comes from crude oil and natural gas, which are non-renewable resources. Waste-to-energy does produce electricity in Massachusetts, but it does not incentivize recycling of valuable materials or municipal composting, which causes the process to be less efficient, as organic materials do not efficiently burn. Additionally, the American Lung Association does not support incineration of municipal solid waste. Burning biomass creates carbon monoxide, which leads to headaches, nausea, dizziness, and in high concentrations, premature death. It releases carcinogens, including benzene and formaldehyde. The dangerous air pollution from burning biomass endangers some people more than others. Millions of infants and children, older adults, individuals with respiratory or cardiovascular disease, asthma, or diabetes, and individuals with lower incomes face a higher risk of suffering serious health effects from these pollutants. Ash resulting from incineration still needs to go to a landfill for final disposal, so reducing our consumption of products wherever we can, for example, using reusable bags, is the best option moving forward. A comment was raised that paper bags are difficult to carry. There are many different styles of reusable bags that work with an individual's needs. Some with long shoulder straps, with padded or soft handles, with more rigid square shapes, or soft-sided bags that can fold into a pouch or clip onto a keychain. Consumers can also request that their retailers use bags with handles. Stores already do this, including the Common Crow, Ace Hardware, Trader Joe's, and Whole Foods. A concern was raised on how this ordinance would impact Gloucester's tourism industry, and we feel this is an opportunity to shine and highlight an environmentally friendly practice. Popular tourist destinations are embracing the opportunity to highlight this practice and are using them to appeal to new demographics as people care more about where they spend their money. The Tourism Authority for the Outer Banks of North Carolina highlights an entire webpage of sustainability on their website. The Aruba Tourism Authority highlights several articles, including one called Aruba Unanimously Votes Yes to Ban the Bag, and the Aruba Hotel and Tourism Association and Divvy Resorts raise awareness with the plastic bag ban campaign. And a quote from that article is, "The Aruba Hotel and Tourism Association and its environmental committee totally support the awareness campaign organized by Plastic Bag Ban Aruba, which was designed to inform the public about the details of the ban. In order to help support this law, members of the AHTA decided to print reusable bags which could be purchased at cost from members and in turn made available to their guests and employees." Closer to home, the Provincetown Tourism Office highlights on their website that Provincetown, Massachusetts has been recognized for their environmental efforts and can now add Top Green City in the U.S. to its list of accolades. And the list goes on to detail an award given to Provincetown for their plastic bag ordinance and commitment to a sustainable future. Gloucester can and should be doing this. Questions were also raised regarding substitutes for pet waste bags. The ordinance will not affect the Mutt-Mitt program bags. However, we have reached out to the Animal Advisory Committee to start the discussion on adding compostable or environmentally friendly bags to their dispensers. Additionally, produce and newspaper bags will still be available for pet owners to use at no cost to themselves. And environmentally friendly bags are available to be purchased at most pet stores or online for roughly 3 to 5 cents per bag, depending on the quantity ordered at a time, a small cost for responsible pet ownership. Even if you used 5 bags a day at 3 cents a bag, It's $54.75 a year, or just over $1 a week. In September, the concern was also raised that environmentally friendly bags are more expensive than plastic bags. So we have researched a price comparison based on a vendor that a retail business told us they use. A frosted plastic bag from Premier Packaging costs between $53.89 and $75.57 for 100 bags, depending on their size. So 54 cents to 76 cents per bag. If that business chose to change to a paper bag containing 95 to 100% post-consumer recycled content from biomass packaging, it would cost $75.05 for 250 bags, or 30 cents a bag, nearly cutting that business's expense in half. If they wanted to use a white paper bag with handles made from Forestry Stewardship Council certified 40% recycled paper, that business would still save money at a cost of $99.75 for 200 bags, or 50 cents a bag. A package of traditional checkout bags, also known as t-shirt bags, from Premier Packaging cost $78.85 for 1,000 bags, or 8 cents a bag for a white bag that says thank you on it, or $90.70 for 1,000 bags, or 9 cents a bag for a solid colored plastic bag. If that business switched to a compostable bag from the Renew Bag Company, they would spend between 6 and 10 cents per bag, which can also be customized with their logo or business decoration. When asked about a statewide proposed legislation on plastic bags, Bill Rennie, the Vice President of the Retailers Association of Massachusetts, stated that this policy is good for everybody because reducing plastic bag usage also cuts costs for business. I'm going to repeat that one because it bears repeating. The Vice President of the Retailers Association of Massachusetts stated that this policy will cut costs for business. The ultimate goal of this ordinance is not to require businesses to provide alternative bags, but to facilitate a cultural shift where customers accept the responsibility of providing their own bags, which relieves businesses from purchasing bags. When considering the switch to paper bags, commenters have also questioned if paper bags are bad for the environment. As it's currently written in our ordinance, it calls for minimum composition of 40% recycled paper. Stop and Shop and Market Basket paper bags already contain 100% post-consumer recycled paper and are both Rainforest Alliance certified as well as Forest Stewardship certified. In the end, compostable or reusable bags, especially made from recycled materials, are our best option for reducing our environmental footprint. We have already explored one option from bags made from a Massachusetts-based vendor, Circular Blue, that produces reusable bags from recycled materials as a potential supplier using some of our grant funding. During a recent City Council debate, a councilor stressed the importance of being proactive, not reactive, in addressing important city issues. We can all agree that Gloucester has a litter problem, which is bad for tourism and bad for the environment. As far as we know, no councilors to this point have suggested appropriating additional funds to Gloucester Police or Gloucester Public Works to enforce littering violations or to add additional waste receptacles, and have not offered to give the Commission a budget to run additional outreach or mitigation efforts. But either way, we have been busy. Gloucester, the Clean City Commission, has received a donation of 350 lightweight reusable bags that are bright yellow and hard to lose and come on a small pouch that clips on a keychain or a purse, generously donated by Gorton's. The Clean City Commission and Seaside Sustainability have also received $750 in grant funding from the New England Grassroots Environmental Fund to distribute reusable bags to our neighbors who may not be able to afford them on their own. To obtain additional funding, we pitched at the Awesome Gloucester in October and were well received. Funding was ultimately awarded to another incredibly worthwhile proposal, but we will be reapplying this winter and have received great feedback to help us improve our application. After hearing about our Awesome Gloucester pitch, a private donor came forward to offer $1,000 towards the purchase of bags before we have even opened any crowdsourced funding campaign. We anticipate that other community members will be eager to donate or support these efforts as well. We will also continue to coordinate with other businesses to seek donations of funds of bags and are exploring ways of hosting a bag exchange where people can donate extra bags and share with their neighbors. We are now working on plans on how best to distribute our bags to our neighbors in need. We are working with the Open Door to determine what style of bag and how many would be an appropriate donation for their use. Additionally, the Commission worked with Councillor Gilman to propose an information session at the Rose Baker Senior Center to seek the perspective of our seniors, answer their questions, clarify what types of bags are involved in the ordinance, and pass out the free bags from Gorton's. When Councillor Gilman called to inquire about the scheduling of this session, she was told that such a program was not welcome at the Senior Center. We are saddened to miss the opportunity to engage our seniors in a conversation about their concerns and their ideas for this ordinance. We're deeply troubled by the fact that these seniors may have signed the opposition petition without the opportunity to have their questions answered by an elected official, and that decision was made by a staff member in a department that receives city funding. We look forward to pursuing and continuing to work with the Senior Center, the Council on Aging, and Senior Housing to engage in an open conversation about the bag ordinance and to find new ways that we can support our seniors by providing them with lightweight, reusable bags. Almost there. On a personal note, in my free time, when I'm not at my full-time job, at a commission meeting, at this meeting, at Ordinance and Administration, I relax by watching episodes of The West Wing. Aaron Sorkin does fantastic political writing. And one of the best lines in the show is that decisions are made by those who show up. On September 12th, 19 Gloucester residents showed up to share their support of this ordinance. Another 23 wrote in to make sure they were heard. Only 6 spoke up in opposition of this ordinance. And tonight, we are joined again by Gloucester residents who have given up their free time to show up and give their support. Again, residents took the time to write to their councilors and express why this ordinance should pass and why it matters to them. In last week's election, people showed up to support councilors who support this ordinance. 2 new councilors will be joining us who support this ordinance to oversee the thoughtful rollout. If decisions are made by those who show up, Gloucester residents have time and time again shown their support, and it is now time for Gloucester's elected officials to hear their voices and respond with their support and action. Thank you.
Thank you, Ainsley. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor?
That was 18 minutes.
Okay. So if we can keep it to 3 minutes, that'd be great. And then also the in favor had 18 minutes, so we're going to give the opposition 18 minutes if they so wish. So 3 minutes, Mrs. Holmgren.
Hi. Thank you very much, Councilors. Jennifer Holmgren, 385 Magnolia Ave. And briefly, I would like to say that provided it is rolled out in a way that is not detrimental to our businesses and residents, I am in favor of a plastic bag ban. The arguments in favor of banning plastic bags are compelling. Gloucester, like most cities, has a litter problem, and I recognize plastic bags are only a part of that problem. But reducing litter at its source, such as the case of the ban, helps reduce the burden of enforcement on our public safety resources while serving as a visible step in Gloucester's green commitment, as we have demonstrated via renewable energy and initiatives like adopting the use of electric vehicles. My family and I have already begun the process of weaning ourselves away from plastic bags, and I know it is not always easy. Habits are hard to break. I am sure the City Council will keep in mind the needs of our elderly and disabled residents who have an easier time with lighter weight parcels, and hopefully we will be able to work with businesses to come up with creative solutions. Other cities who have already enforced bans no doubt have useful experience and best practices, and maybe we can reach out to representatives from other cities to see what has and hasn't worked for them. I am also aware that the Clean City Commission is working toward building up a reserve of reusable bags, thank you Ainsley, for people who cannot afford to buy their own, and that in and of itself is a thoughtful and creative solution. As we have been countless times before, let's be leaders in this area too. We are a community of diverse needs, but I do hope the council can get behind a bag ban ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie Matheson, Parker Street, local business owner in Gloucester as well as Rockport. I spoke last time, so I'll keep it brief, but I know that our business has never once used plastic bags. We actually get our bags, we used to get them for just over 20 cents a piece, recycled paper bags. We recently upgraded to ones with our logos on them, so they're a bit more expensive, but still very cost effective for us. On a personal note, in my personal time, my sister and I spend our days mornings walking our dogs on the beach. We also bring bags with us, actually 5-gallon buckets with us to clean up the beach. I know on a daily basis, we find anywhere between 2 and 10 plastic bags, and not just Ziploc bags, mostly all the t-shirt bags that we're talking about. So they're not just ending up on our streets, they're ending up directly in our oceans, and I see it firsthand every single day. So I am in support of this ban. Thank you.
In favor?
Ken Hecht, 191 Main Street, commonly known as the trash picker-upper along Main Street. I did pick one up on a plastic bag on the way over here. They're all over the place, by my experience, constantly in downtown. And I think the big picture, I think that the speakers have done a very good job of talking about the business situation, the costs. But I think it's a more fundamental question: is do we want to be cutting edge? You know, what do we want Gloucester to be? Do we want to live in the future? Do we want to make things happen? Do we want to be environmentally cutting edge, or do we want to be stuck in the past and you know, use technology that's not environmentally friendly? I think it's really something that we need to do it and think about. Are we going to be cutting edge environmentally? And I vote yes. I wish you vote yes too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor? I see nobody else. Does anybody like to speak in opposition? Oh, in favor?
My name's Joanne Hart, Gloucester, Massachusetts. I haven't heard this mentioned, so I thought I'd come up and speak for the oceans. So I'd just like to say that Gloucester has a particular obligation, being on the ocean, to not have single-use plastic bags blowing around and blowing into the water, which then look like jellyfish, and then all the sea mammals eat them, and the whales, the sea turtles, everybody, their stomachs get all clogged up, and they have long, painful deaths on the beach. There's other reasons. Plastic is immortal. It breaks down only to the cellular level, not molecular, and so that it is forever. It's just like you can't even see these fragments that are in there. This is our Gloucester's a fishing town, and so eventually the plastic breaks down into microscopic pieces, but not elements. So all the plankton eat these little single-cell things, thinking they're smaller plankton, and then it just moves on up the food chain and biointensification until, like, the fish then that we catch and that we sell that's got Gloucester stamped on it is basically toxic. These are now pseudoestrogens in these cells, and the fish are contaminated with them, and then we eat them, then we're contaminated. Everything has can test for plastic elements in it now, including Gloucester's fish. So just being on the water, and being a fishing town, we have a special obligation to keep plastic out of the oceans. Thank you.
Joanne, can we have your address for the record, please?
Excuse me?
Could we have your address for the record?
Fort Hill Avenue, Gloucester.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor? Are you in favor?
What is your name? Yes.
Yes. Okay. So do we have anybody in opposition?
My name is Lucy Sheehan. I'm the director at the Gloucester Council on Aging, and I am here this evening because the seniors have asked me to come to speak for them. This is just a little bag, plastic bag. It may mean nothing to a lot of people, but to the seniors, it is a great commodity. They need this bag. They use it for a lot. There's lots of uses for it, and without the bag, they just feel like something has been taken away from them. Lots of them are very upset. I just got off the phone. I've been down at the senior center working all day and this evening also. And I've just got off the phone talking with a few of them, and they're very upset to think that the council would take these bags away from them. They are very important. They feel that having a bag that they need to wash is not something that's sanitary. That you put food in, you put fish, it drips, it's not really clean, and they're not for that. So there's lots of uses for these little bags, and I don't see them anywhere on the water. Seniors aren't throwing them in the water, that's for sure. And I don't even see them in the streets. I think our streets are pretty clean. So we're for keeping the bags. On behalf of the seniors, and there's over 7,404 seniors age 60 in Gloucester, and that's just a modified amount. The number is really much larger than that. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else to speak in opposition, please? Yes, sir. Name and address, sir.
Hey, my name is Arthur Sheehan. I live at 3 Blueberry Lane, Gloucester. Has anybody here ever tried to carry a paper bag out when it's pouring buckets out? You know, it's unsafe for the seniors, and it's also very unsanitary if you get fish or meat you're taking home when the blood drips in, and then you might say, well, wash the bags out. Well, everybody don't wash the bags out. So it's also a health issue and a safety issue for the seniors. I don't know if any of you people have ever been up the Market Basket, but you see a lot of seniors that take cabs and buses, and the plastic bags are a lot more stronger than paper bags. Paper bags, I think, would pose a safety hazard for senior citizens. Thank you very much, and I hope you vote to keep the bags. And Council Orlando had a good idea about if they're in the harbor, we'll hire something to get it out of the harbor. It isn't the bags; it's an enforcement issue, where anybody littering, it should be enforced. Not only are those bags good for, some people use it to pick up the dog poop, and you know, and then dispose of it in the proper way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition? If there are any more people who would like to speak, if you'd like to just stand up behind the speaker so we get a count. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pauline Bresnahan. I own Pauline's Gifts on Essex Ave. I have a bag with me. It's 18 years old. It's a plastic bag. I use these in the store. I have for 18 years because they last. I got in touch with the people on the commission because I never got any information about the bag ban. I haven't gotten anything from them except when I got in touch. I thought I did not realize the city commission was doing this. I thought it was a nonprofit organization that was pushing this to the city. So I am a little concerned about nonprofits taking over a city commission because I'm a little confused by that. So I'm offended sometimes when they say businesses didn't reply, but I also was not informed. And I think a lot of us business owners, and I, for one, for 18 years in the city, have done my best to make sure that my products are the best quality. I pay a lot for my plastic bags, and I think they last. I mean, people use my bags over and over. That's my advertisement right there. And I want them to know that I do a good quality bag. A paper bag is not going to last 18 years. So that's my issue. My other issue is litter. I have never picked up a plastic bag on 133 in front of my store. I have picked up lottery tickets. I have picked up nip bottles. I've picked up McDonald's paper bags filled with trash. I have picked up everything but a plastic bag, I have to say, in 18 years. I have always lived on Essex Ave, and that is a big issue, is litter. And until we bring litter back into, I grew up with litter bug campaigns in my school. We were our parents' worst nightmare. We were in their ear all the time. Don't throw that out, don't throw that out, don't throw that out. You know, that's littering. And we have done nothing in our elementary schools to teach our children how bad littering and how ugly it is. I didn't ever talk to Ainsley, but I emailed her. The prices she gave you for bags is the best, the highest price bags there are. Manufacturers, I gave her 4 names of 4 businesses. She was able to pick the most expensive one of the 4. I mean, I don't pay $54 a case for a bag like that. She was able to pick out the most expensive. I wish that they would talk to all of our retailers. I don't like litter either, but bags are not our only litter problem. I'd like to see how they'd like if I banned disposable diapers. I think they're a huge problem too, but I don't see that happening soon. I just wish people would communicate, and I'm very concerned when I hear that nonprofit people are heading up our city commissions, because as a commissioner myself, I can only write recommendations. I do not push my own agenda ever when I talk at my commission meetings. So that's my concern, and I appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Pauline. Opposition?
Good evening. My name is Linda Charpentier. I reside at 4 St. Joseph Lane in Magnolia, and I'm here to ask the council to vote against the ban. I have 50 years' experience behind this speech to you tonight, 50 years in the chemical processing industry in both research and manufacturing. I also have 25 years managing environmental regulations for these industries and environmental sustainability. I hold degrees in chemistry, and I have a certification in environmental management. Most notably, however, I'm on the Conservation Commission here in Gloucester, but I don't speak for the Conservation Commission tonight. I want that on the record. I'm speaking as a concerned citizen that the council is going forward and making a decision by voting for this without good scientific evidence behind it. In order to truly assess the impact of plastic versus paper, you have to understand that both are detrimental to the environment. It's human beings that cause damage to the environment. It doesn't matter if it's paper or plastic. But to come up with a good solution, you really need to do a full life cycle assessment of both plastic and paper. And that starts with the extraction of raw materials through the entire manufacturing process to the end users, to disposal, to the possibility of reuse and recyclability. And I know the pro committee here came up with a lot of reasons for using paper over plastic. It's interesting that they probably didn't read the Scottish report from 2005. The Scottish government, for 2 years, conducted research on paper versus plastic. They invited governments from all over the world, scientists from all over the world, and it's interesting what they came up with. They basically said that paper has a more adverse impact than a plastic bag in terms of the total life cycle and the total carbon footprint. You see, I understand that we're concerned about the oceans and trash getting into the oceans, but I agree with the person before me that this is not necessarily a plastic bag issue, it is a litter issue. So when you look at the total life cycle of paper and you want to talk about destruction, you start with a tree. It takes 25 years to grow that renewable. And then you use petroleum-based equipment to cut it down, drag it through the forest. And by the way, what you're destroying there is habitat. Every tree is habitat for birds or other critters. So you destroy that habitat, you destroy the forest further by yanking the trees out of it. Now you use petroleum-based fuel to get that to a sawmill, more diesel fuel and more energy to saw that wood, more energy to move that now to a pulp manufacturing plant. And by the way, pulp manufacturing uses tremendous numbers of chemicals, mostly lye and other chemicals, creates incredible chemical waste streams. Then you transport that pulp to a paper mill. Now the paper mill uses more energy to process that. And by the way, you're transporting all of this a lot by, if you're not using barge here, then you're using trucks, diesel. So now you're in the paper mill using more chemicals to make that paper bag. Paper bags are not as recyclable or reusable as plastic. So I don't think, unless the council has really done a good job of a total life cycle assessment, I don't think you can make a decision and just say, oh, plastic's better, and it's a lot cheaper. I'm not convinced that it's cheaper either. Just remember that businesses went to plastic for a reason. You know, they probably would have stayed with paper if paper were cheaper. So I also want to say that if the paper bags are more expensive, which I believe they are, that cost is going to be like a regressive tax on low income and fixed income people, of which I am one now, partially retired. You know, 4 cents here, 4 cents there, that's going to add to the cost of goods sold. It's going to be passed on, and it's going to affect seniors, and it's going to affect low-income people way more than it's going to affect people who make $100,000 and have a nice salary somewhere. The other thing that concerns me is that the council is considering an exemption for nonprofits. Why is a nonprofit's plastic bag any more or less detrimental to the environment than a plastic bag from a business? That is the most foolish, ridiculous proposal. You can't have it both ways. Plastic bags are either detrimental, and we've got to get rid of them, including nonprofits, including the food pantry, including every nonprofit. Do you really want to do that? Add more expense to them? And finally, I just want to reiterate that the issue with plastic bags in the environment is not a plastic bag issue. It is a people issue. It is a litter issue. It is an education issue. I would like to see the council promote more in education, less regulation, and more thought toward alternatives in keeping the plastic bags and the paper bags out of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Opposition. Mr. Wynot.
You've already heard me talk about the incineration of it and how it doesn't really pollute, and how the trees, cut down more trees. The paper bags they have in the stores right now, they don't hold anything because they're so thin. But anyway, you heard one of the ladies say that you didn't do your job on enforcing litter, so therefore you should pass this. Well, what's the next step? We pass the little rings that go on the beer things. Some people drink beer, I don't, but those plastic things, they do more damage to fish than a plastic bag. Cigarette butts, water bottles. I mean, we're going to handle this one step at a time, one item, and keep prohibiting them all. Or maybe we should think about enforcing litter also and educating, starting in the schools, first, second, third grade, and also getting the kids involved to tell their parents not to litter, and then also enforce it. I know Councilor O'Hara doesn't like litter because he picked up all my signs. Thank you. Anyway, but I think this is a rush to judgment. I know it's been a couple of years, but I bet if you put this on the ballot, it would go down in flames. And those would be the paper bags. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in opposition? Seeing none. Do we have any communications?
Yes, we do. And all the communications all the councilors received. Okay, so the communications received in favor of plastic bag ban is Ian Kerr, Ocean Alliance, 32 Horton Street, Kathleen George, 16 Allen Street, Laura Rashane, 423 Essex Avenue, Peter Parsons, 37 Washington Street, Ann Cortizos, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, 120 Centennial Avenue, Rosemary Scott Fishburne, 17 Beacon Street, Joshua Scott Fishburne, 17 Beacon Street, Jennifer Parker, 184 Washington Street, Margaret Lico, 21 Riggs Point Road, Zach Orsolak, 14 Pine Street, Ann Strasha, 31 Lincoln Park, Ron Farron, 35R Gay Avenue, Jerome G. Gulot Jr., no address given, Meredith Anderson, 19 Briarwood Street, Erin Kirchner, no address given, Michelle Barclay, 639 Washington Street, Margaret Mayer, no address given, Kimberly A. Cloutier Blazard, 25 Quarry Street, Christopher Anderson, 24 Highland Street, Kathleen Toomey, 25 Whittemore Street, Patrick Belmonte, Lauren Belmonte, Haven Hatch, Dominic Martinelli, Kendra Berry, Change is Simple Inc. from Beverly, Mass. Amanda Nash, 8 Exchange Street. Peggy Russell, The Pop Shop, 67 Main Street. Stephanie J. Harris, Mass State Director, the Humane Society of the United States. Gloucester Clean City Commission. John J. Clark, Director of Public Policy and Government Relations, Mass Audubon Society. The communications received in opposition to the plastic bag were 160 signatures from Gloucester seniors, Betty Shaw of 12 Madison Court. Amanda Kesterson just wrote a letter for pro-choice, that it should be a choice and not a mandate. And Doug Parsons also wrote an email that you all received for pro-choice.
Thank you. Do we have any rebuttal?
Thank you. So I believe I was making notes as I think I've got everybody's comments taken into consideration. So last year, the Clean City Commission worked with DPW to fund a recycling and waste management program for all of our 4th and 5th grade students through the Recycling Dividends program. This was done for every single 4th and 5th grade class in the city, in the public schools. DPW was so thrilled with the outcome, they've decided to make that a permanent annual program. As the Clean City Commission, we reached out to 485 of the roughly 500 plus businesses in Gloucester. We realized that we didn't get to everyone, but that was the best we could do with our limited time in between coming to meetings and trying to organize all sorts of other outreach efforts. We apologize that we missed Pauline. I believe she's already left. We did make sure that we sent her information on October 2nd and we have a confirmation email from her that says thank you for that information. We reached out to her again last week to share some additional information. At that time, I asked her for her vendors so that I could find out who she specifically works with. She did send me 4. I only had time to look at one of them, and I apologize that it turns out it was an expensive one, but I did that based on the type of bag that she told me that she used, so I looked for that type of bag. Regarding meat and fish at the grocery store, we've addressed that these thin bags to contain meat or fish or other leaky potential items are still allowed to address any concern of food contamination. As I said in my comments earlier, we are not promoting the use of paper bags and alternative bags for businesses. The goal is to make a shift to reusable bags so businesses don't have to pay for any bags. In regards to the trash skimmer, it's a reactive backstop to make sure that no trash gets into the ocean. It's not a proactive approach to littering, and it does not stop people from littering. However, we think that the two combined together take a pretty comprehensive step at tackling it from both ends. I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any rebuttal from the opposition? Seeing none. Do we have any councilor questions? Councilor Cox.
On the information you got from the senior center, were there addresses on those signatures to confirm that they were in fact Gloucester residents?
There were some with addresses and some, they were just signatures.
And how many were there?
160.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor questions? Councilor Gilman.
It's kind of somewhat of a question. I guess I would be interested to know if the seniors are aware that you can bring your own single-use plastic bags and continue to use them. So people, I think we talked about that at the last meeting, that there's nothing to stop people from bringing their own plastic bags like the ones that we've showed to demonstrated, and bring those to a retail store.
Councilor
and
Gilman, can we save
using
that to the discussion point? This is just for
Sure.
questions.
No, it was
Yeah,
just a
I don't
kind of
wanna-
a question, the same thing.
I don't
but-
want to wander off like we did last time. I want to make sure that we stick to and get everybody out of here efficiently and have to hear what everybody has to say.
Okay,
So,
it's fair.
do we have any other councilor questions? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and call for the committee report.
On a motion by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Nolan, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council amend GCO Chapter 9, Section 9-12 by adding a new Article 2, Plastic Bags, Section 9-12 definition as follows. The following words shall have the following meanings: building inspector, the building inspector or his/her designee, ASTM D6400, the American Society for Testing in Materials, ASTM, International Standard Specification for Compostable Plastics, ASTM D7081, ASTM International Standard Specification for Biodegradable Plastic and Marine Environment. Compostable plastic bag, a plastic bag that, 1, conforms to the current ASTM D6400 for the compostability, and 2, is certified and labeled as meeting the ASTM D6400 standard specification by a recognized verification entity. A plastic bag that is made of polyethylene, polyethylene tetrafiliate, polyvinyl chloride, polypropylene, or nylon is not deemed compostable. Department, the city's building department. Marine degradable plastic bag, a plastic bag that conforms to the current ASTM D7081 standard specification for marine degradability. A plastic bag that is made of polyethylene, polyethylene tetrafiliate, polyvinyl chloride, polypropylene, or nylon is not deemed marine degradable. Recyclable paper bag. A paper bag that meets all of the following requirements. 1, is 100% recyclable overall and contains a minimum of 40% post-consumer recycled material, and 2, is capable of composting, consistent with the timeline and specification of ASTM standard D6400. Retail establishment. Any commercial business facility that sells goods and/or services directly to the consumer, including but not limited to grocery stores, pharmacies, liquor stores, convenience stores, restaurants, and retail stores selling clothing, food, personal items, and dry cleaning services. Reusable checkout bag, a sewn bag with stitched handles that is either A, made of cloth or other machine washable fabric, or B, made of plastic other than polyethylene polyvinyl chloride that is durable, non-toxic, and generally considered a food-grade material that is more than 2.25 mils thick. Single-use plastic bag, a plastic bag provided by a retail establishment to a customer at the point of sale for the purpose of removing products purchased within that retail establishment. Thin film plastic bags used to contain dry cleaning, newspapers, produce, meat, cheese, bulk foods, wet items, and other similar merchandise, typically without handles, are permissible. And I so move.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Councilor Cox.
As the maker of the order, I just want to clear up a few questions that were not answered earlier. Retail establishment, this is the standard language used in most of the bag bans in the state of Massachusetts. So as we heard earlier, the Retail Association asked for consistency, so that is what was proposed. I do understand that it does exempt some nonprofits, but those nonprofits that we have talked to, second glance would be part of this bag ban. They will have to do it because they're a retail establishment. But Open Door has already started seeking other solutions for their bag use and for their shopping center. So it's standard language, but at the same time, we're trying for consistency, and there's groups that are working with us to try to move forward with furthering the objective.
Council discussion, anybody else? Councilor Nolan.
I think that when this started, listening to Councilor Cox and Councilor Berger at the time in O&A, piquing my interest into it and really looking into to what it involves to the city and its environment and the ocean, and then watching it progress and then go away and come back, and the amount of work that everybody has put into this, I think that it's an excellent thing for the city. And I do believe that most of the people that I've talked to, I would say high 80 to 90% are in favor of this. I have spoken with most of the elderly residents about being able to store their bags and reuse them. There's no laws about not being able to go to the store with a bag that you may already have. I think that if the senior center had maybe let the Clean City Commission come in to talk to some people, they would have found out that there is some other solutions out there to help them as well. I think everybody's worked very hard on this, and I'm going to be supporting this wholeheartedly.
Councilor Orlando.
I'd like to applaud the group that put this together on all the hard work, all the background, the presentation, the passion. I appreciate all of it. I really do. I don't necessarily agree with the premise, but I appreciate all the hard work, and I think you've done a wonderful job presenting it to us twice now. And as a person who hates when bureaucracy gets in the way, I'm sorry you had to do it twice. But that being said, I have to say a couple things. The reasons why I disagree with the premise of banning products like this. For one, plastic bags. I'm not an environmental scientist, for the sake of this discussion, I'll presume what I'm hearing is correct. They're bad for the environment, right? Okay, we can all agree with that. There's a lot of products out there that are way bigger culprits in our oceans and cigarette butts and plastic bottles and the like that we're not tackling here. I think to be proactive, which is what I've been saying, I think ideas where we give constituents the tools they need to make the right and smart decisions, such as the Cigarette Butler program, which I think is fantastic, such as ocean skimmers. Councilor Nolan said he'd like to see 15 of them at one point. Right now, we're at 1, and hopefully we'll be at 2 pretty soon. Those are great ideas. Those are tangible efforts to clean up, and I think those are the places that we should start. I think we're sort of jumping ahead here. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. Just recently, to be proactive, I talked to the city clerk's office about filing a council order requiring closed bin recycling bins. One of the things we're seeing is when we eliminated allowing recycling to be put into trash bags, we started seeing them blow all over the city. That's another way to tangibly and proactively clean up our trash. I think that this council should spend more of its time implementing ideas like that rather than telling our constituents what products they can and cannot use. As a basic premise, I don't like when government does that, so I have a hard time with this anyway, but on a personal level, I have 2 babies at home, and we use plastic bags to put the diapers in, and I'm scratching my head as to what we're gonna do when I don't have plastic bags to put diapers in. So if anybody wants to, has any plastic bags at home they want to donate to us, I'm sure there's gonna be more babies coming. We're gonna throw that stuff away, and trust me, you don't want that without the plastic bags. I will say this much too. I appreciate the efforts of Councilor Cox. The litter problem is real, and I think that's what it is. I think it's the litter problem. I think we have to educate people the way we did when I was a kid in school. When I was a kid, my parents weren't putting out recycling bins. I went to school and I learned all about recycling, and then over the years, now it's a way of life. I think that's how we have to tackle this problem in a more broader sense. I just don't think banning items is going to be sustainable. What happens next? Cigarette butts are the next thing? Are we going to ban cigarettes? I don't think so. We're going to ban plastic bottles? Not likely. How are we going to approach the rest of the products that we think are bad for the environment? We can't just ban everything. So I think this is not the way to approach it, but I appreciate the premise and I agree with the premise. We have to clean it up. As the liaison of the Tourism Commission, let's face it, businesses use the products that are most affordable so they don't have to keep their costs down. These plastic bags are simply at this point more affordable. If they weren't more affordable, they wouldn't be being used. So these businesses, 350 or so of them in the community, as a liaison to the Tourism Commission, I represent their interests, and I definitely cannot vote to increase their costs. So I'll be voting no, while I appreciate the premise, the concern, and I'll be actively working in other ways in my next month and a half on the council to find ways that we can clean up our city, because I think it's important. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there any councilors that have any? Councilor Gilman.
So I do want to go back to the stockpiling comment now, because I think that's important. I talked to a senior last night, it was Betty Shaw, actually, and we talked at length. We had spoken about 3 weeks ago as well. And one of the things that she was not aware of is that we would allow people to bring in the plastic bags that they have kept, that right now we all have in drawers, and to continue to reuse those. So there's nothing stopping them, and she was kind of surprised to hear that. She thought that they would not be allowed, period, in retail stores. So I think we probably could have done a better job communicating that to particularly seniors that were concerned about losing those bags, is that there are ways to continue using them. They all use them over and over and over again. They're comfortable, and they are easy for them to handle. The example of being out in the rain is a good one, because my friend Betty Shaw tried to use a paper bag two nights ago with a cane, and she had to crinkle it up, and it was raining, and it was a problem. So, you know, when I told her, yeah, you can keep the plastic bags. In fact, I can give you a whole heap of them. You can keep them. You can use those, continue to use them. So she was enlightened to hear that. However, she was still not in favor, but she felt that that was something new. So that's one thing I think is important in education. The other thing is Maggie Rosa did a pretty neat survey. She went out and she got normal little plastic bag, one of the single-use plastic bags that we're talking about, and then she got one of the lightweight recyclable bags that is made of like cotton or something in one of the local supermarkets. And she went and she took about 8 or 9 different items and she put them in both, and I think the weight difference was minuscule. It was maybe 5, like less than a half of a pound from one to the other. So she felt very comfortable. And number 3, I've really gotten into the habit of constantly using my recyclable bags when I go to the supermarket. My husband does the same. We bring them right back into our car. We stuff them all in one. We go in, and we're finding that we're so much more organized when we're at the checkout. It makes bringing stuff in much easier, and I can carry 2 bags on each hand with the same type of technique, and I don't find that those bags are really a heck of a lot heavier than the plastic bags. So, you know, I really, you know, we've spent a lot of time on this matter. I totally empathize with the concerns that the seniors have, but I think just knowing the amount of preparation that Clean Gloucester has put in, and Seaside Sustainability and different groups are really, you know, we've got a wonderful donation from Gorton's of these really cool, light, recyclable bags that fold into a keychain. We've got all these donations. We can just start using those. We have a year and a month to prepare and to educate and to get people to understand that we can help people solve their issues if they're struggling. So I will be supporting this. I think it's really important for the city, for our animals, the beautiful city that we have, and I thank Councilor Cox and the folks that have put a lot of time into this. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gilman. Councilor Memhard.
I would like also just to thank everyone who spoke this evening and previously, and I have the greatest respect for all the concerns and the thought that has gone into this discussion. I think that we're talking about different things here between educating people not to waste plastic bags and recycling. I think the litter issue is a very real issue, and I think we need to address the recycling suggestions that you made about closed lid tops. For the education component, it's really for the seniors as much as the kids. We talk about education at the 3rd and 4th grade level. We need to work with our seniors too, so that there's not an element of fear or concern that Lucy spoke to very eloquently. I don't believe in unnecessary bureaucracy being imposed on people's choices, but I think that this does make sense, and I think it's a part of an overall program, and it's one appropriate step at this time, and I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilor Memhard. Councilor O'Hara.
Thank you. I've been torn with this from the get-go, but from the standpoint of environmentally, we've all worked through environmental changes, obviously years ago, before recycling even became a part of society. We all burned our trash in the backyard. Obviously, it wasn't very environmentally friendly. The plastic bags, I've spoken to the seniors, most notably what Councilor Gilman said, Betty Shaw, about the plastic bags, and my heart goes out to the seniors and all of us who do use plastic bags. But it is a move towards being a little bit more environmentally conscious. Society and business, I feel, will correct any wrongs. The paper bags that rip, the paper bags without handles. We'll get through this. I have to agree with Councilor Orlando. 2 weeks ago, we had a 70, 80-mile-an-hour breeze that blew through Gloucester. We all knew it. We lost power. Trees went down. East Gloucester, it was their day to pick up recycles. Open-top bins, the bins couldn't even be found. Forget about where the recycled goods went. People put it out because they're good citizens. They want to do the right thing, but unfortunately, we lost probably more trash that day. I'm sure JRM picked up absolutely zero in the form of recycling. So we need to address the bigger problem which is the open-top containers, the methods that we employ in our city to collect our trash, and just educate, as we've all talked tonight, about educating the public on how to be cleaner, having equipment in our city to clean our streets, because we need to keep our streets clean for the visitors that come into our city, as well as our residents. So I will be supporting this. We'll get through this. There are bigger issues that we need to deal with, but this is a very important one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor O'Hara. Councilor Lundberg.
Thank you, Councilor LeBlanc. So I agree with Councilor Orlando about limiting choices. I think the difference in this particular instance is that we are not limiting choices, but we're expanding the choices of what can replace the offending plastic bag. And there are actually many, many choices. I've spoken to many seniors myself and kind of had to work through some of the issues of carrying and how many bags. And I agree with the paper bags are not an option, but reusable plastic bags with the handles are definitely an option, and better options than we have now. And I think that Councilor O'Hara is correct. We now have plus 12 months to work through the issues, the educational part, and with the wonderful options that have been presented by the Clean City Commission and others who have researched this, I think we're going to be able to make this work. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Councilor Lundberg. Councilor Cox.
I'm sorry, I thought we were only talking on the one motion, so I will expand my viewpoint at this time. So at no time are we advocating paper over plastic. We understand that paper is as harmful and destructive to the environment as plastic is. Although paper is recyclable. That's the key here. I do not think, I know firsthand that we have a litter problem in this city. I spend countless mornings cleaning up my own neighborhood. I am part of a group called the 1 Hour at a Time Gang and have been since before I was elected. However, I don't think this means that we can be a single-track city. We can't just work on litter. We can't just work on bans. We're doing both. There's a lot of good people out there that spend a lot of their time cleaning up the city, whether it's with an organized group or going down to DPW and getting a yellow bag and doing their own neighborhood. It happens a lot more than you would suspect. If you go to See Click Fix and look at how many yellow bag pickup requests there are, there's a lot, because a lot of people do this. This is an extra layer. I think the ban is more of an initiative to push us to be more sustainable. In the motion that was read earlier, hold on. ASTM D6400. This is a bag standard, and I'm really short, so I'm going to stand up for this one. These bags are made out of corn. This is your typical t-shirt bag. This can replace the t-shirt bags that we're using right now that are made out of oil. This is compostable. This is better for our environment. Science is catching up to our needs. And the more retailers buy these, and these are legal, these are just as good as the t-shirt bags that we have now, but they are made from corn, which means they break down in compost piles. So let's get more of these. They're not marine biodegradable, they're not perfect, but we're getting there. So, but the marine bags are also allowed when science catches up. Europe has them now. They dissolve in water. It's great. Not rain, but like large amounts of water. So if they're in the ocean, they're going to break down over a couple weeks. So the likelihood of getting caught up in a mammal is less. So As a counselor, I can request through the mayor's office to have our little problem addressed and enforced by the DPW. However, it's extremely hard to do that when their manpower has been cut more and more each year. So, back to the funding. Yes, we need to push to fund those resources. The police department can also enforce litter. However, again, their staffing numbers are really low, and we really want them to address the more important issues of our city. So that is where we come in, by being decent human beings, working through stuff like this, and being better citizens for our environment. I will be supporting this, if you haven't guessed.
Really? Is there anybody else for council or discussion on the first motion? I know we're at the first motion, but I figure we just get it all on the table now. It'll be more efficient for everybody at the end, I promise you. So I agree with everybody here. We have a litter problem. I know Ainsley has been to a bunch of committees over the past several months, also the Animal Advisory Committee, and we've discussed it up there. I think we need to bring this to the schools and educate the young, because I think when they come home and they pester at you, you kind of, you know. I didn't support this the first time around. It took me a lot to take a look at things. I have to answer to a higher power when I go home, because she told me not to support this tonight, so I'm going to support it. I think it's inevitable. It's eventually going to happen, so I think the sooner we have this out, the quicker everybody will be able to respond and learn how to do it. And, you know, it's just a matter of getting used to. I was at BJ's Saturday or Sunday. They don't have bags at all at BJ's. And these people are carrying out carfuls of stuff into their cars. So that just solidified it for me a little bit more when I got to see it firsthand in this major store with everybody walking out with these huge items and nothing was in a bag. So I'm going to support this tonight. I just want to recognize Councilor Verga. Councilor Verga was the first one to bring this forward. Councilor Cox saw it through, and I'd also like to thank the Clean City, Ainsley and Eric. You guys rock, and everybody. I'm sorry, you guys really, you know, did your due diligence, and I know up at O&A, we had a 2-to-1 vote, I mean, a 1 in favor, 2 opposed vote the first time around, and the second time you guys came around, you got a 3 in favor vote, so you guys did a really good job. Also, Ainsley had a really good analogy up at O&A a few weeks ago about cigarette smoke. Everybody used to smoke, and everybody used to smoke in restaurants, so it was a little bit getting used to people not smoking in restaurants, but eventually everybody came around, and I'm sure there's none of us can think about, even imagine sitting next to somebody in a restaurant having a cigarette. So that was a great analogy, and I just wanted to pass that on. So I'm going to support this tonight. Thank you. This is just a simple majority vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? 8-1. We have the next motion. Oh. Yes, 7-1. Do we have another motion?
On a motion by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Nolan, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council amend GCO Chapter 9 by adding a new Section 9-13 requirements as follows. No retail establishment as defined in this article shall provide a single-use plastic bag to a customer or customers unless the bag complies with the requirements of being either recyclable paper bag or a compostable and marine degradable plastic bag or a reusable checkout bag. B, nothing in this article shall prohibit a customer or prohibit customers from using bags of any type that they bring into the retail establishment themselves or from carrying away goods that are not placed in a bag in lieu of bags provided by retail establishment. C, building inspector may promulgate rules and regulations to implement this article, and I so move.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion? I think we hammered it all out the first motion, so we're going to go with a vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Do we have another motion?
On a motion by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Nolan, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council amend GCO Chapter 9 by adding a new Section 9-14, enforcement and penalties as follows. Building inspector shall investigate any report of a failure to comply with this article. A, the building inspector determines that a violation has occurred, the building inspector shall issue a warning notice to retail establishment for the initial violation. B, the penalty for each violation that occurs after the issuance of the warning notice shall be $50 for each offense. Payment of such fines may be enforced through a civil action in the district court. C, a retail establishment shall have 15 days after the date that a notice of violation is issued to pay the penalty, or the amount of the penalty payable shall be doubled, and I so move.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
On a motion by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Nolan, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council amend GCO Chapter 9 by adding a new Section 9-15 exemptions as follows. The annual Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive sponsored by Open Door and the National Association of Letter Carriers Food Drive shall be exempt from this article, and I so move.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Hold the vote, discussion.
I have
Councilor
been
Cox.
in communication with Julie LaFontaine from the Open Door, and they are actually in the process of pricing out the acceptable bags for this because they don't buy them, they're donated. So I'm hopeful that we can eliminate this in a year.
The corn-based bag you have in your hands, I had a discussion with Eric Majors, and he said those aren't the standard anymore. There's a different one. Are those the allowable bags, or I thought the discussion we had were those were the older bag and there's a newer one?
I misunderstood what you were saying. So those are acceptable. The ones that we were sent are not. The ones that we were sent are biodegradable. Biodegradable does not mean compostable.
All right, because that looks exactly like the one I was sent.
But it's not.
Okay, that's why I
Yes.
got confused.
The first round of bags that were sent to all of us were not,
Okay.
by definition,
It looks,
acceptable.
yeah, it looks exactly like the one. Okay.
Yeah,
But it's
not made out of corn.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
On a motion by Councilor O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Nolan, the Ordinance Administration Committee voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend that the City Council amend GCO Chapter 9 by adding a new Section 9-16 effective date as follows. All the requirements set forth in this article shall take effect January 1st, 2019. I so move.
We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Oh, do we have any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? And that is all. Thank you, Clean City. Thank you, Councilor Verga. Thank you, Councilor Cox. And we have a year to figure this out, and Clean City, you need to step up and make sure that we educate. Thank you. What do you?
Can I
Councilor Cox?
please ask for a 3-minute recess?
I was going to do one anyway.
Anybody that wants to get one of these reusable Gorton's bag, please see Clean City Commission in the front row, please.
We're going to have a 3-minute recess, please.
Stand by, folks. We have a presentation.
Okay.
Okay. These canvas bags are compliments of the Middle Street Walk in celebration of what took place here tonight. And the city council will be the leaders. We got the bags. Okay, we are on.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, next item.
Next item is for council vote, City Council Order 2016-047 O'Hara, 17, 047 O'Hara requests that the Mass DOT Highway Division conduct a feasibility study regarding installing divider lines entering into Grant Circle Rotary from the north and south entrances to Washington Street.
Okey-doke. Is there a motion?
Request that the Mass Department of Transportation Highway Division conduct a feasibility study installing divider lines entering into Grand Circle Rotary from the north and south entrance of Washington Street. I so move.
Moved and seconded. Do you have a narrative on it, Counselor? Basically, what this is just to
Yeah,
give
sure.
emphasis
Yeah,
to
most
put
definitely.
the full force of the city council behind your order.
Correct.
Okay.
Enter the Rotary at any time after 6 a.m. on the weekday, and you'll see 2 lines of traffic typically on both sides. The people who don't know the goings-on of the Rotary are obviously the ones that are in the single lane, cause congestion. Hopefully, it's something that can be done, but I think it will ease traffic congestion and keep things a little more safe than the present state.
Thank you. All right, simple majority. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the Council Order 2017-048 O'Hara to petition the Mass DOT Highway Division to repaint the formal divider lines on Route 127 and Route 128 regarding Eastern Avenue.
Is there a motion?
I move that the City Council directs the City Clerk to forward a letter to the Mass Department of Transportation Highway Division on behalf of the City Council to the Mass Department of Transportation requesting that they repaint the formal divider lines southwesterly from the traffic lights on Eastern Ave westbound on Route 127 to Main Street, and to repaint the formal divider line from Harrison Avenue to the Eastern Avenue Route 120 lights for the purpose of dividing the traffic traveling west and traffic going south, Route 128, and I so move.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any discussion, narrative?
This would be, again, similar to the Rotary to help clean up the traffic situation, reduce congestion.
Thank you. Simple majority. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Next item is the update of the Council on Aging Board by the City Council Representative Valerie Gilman.
We are going to postpone that till our next visit, so Council Gilman can have a conversation with the council. Next item. Council request to the mayor. Why don't we start with Council Memhard? Council Gilman.
I'll give you this, Dana. Request through the mayor that administration considers ways to communicate to all residents during prolonged power outages, including and not limited to phone hotlines with status updates, emergency help numbers for homebound seniors, good neighbor programs similar to Annisquam Village, solar signs in wards, and the reintroduction of CERT volunteers. And let me just describe why I think that this is important. And I have sent an email to the mayor with some of my suggestions. The reason why I think this is important is that I was one of the ones that had a power outage for 4 days. And on my street of 18 houses that were affected, 5 of those residents don't do social media. They have old-fashioned flip phones that batteries had died One of them needed help with breathing apparatuses and oxygen. There was another man in my ward at Reeks Point who was very worried because he didn't have any power to use his life alert. And fortunately, Kevin Hicks went and visited him daily to make sure that he was okay and try to charge his battery for him, which was great. So our police did a great job. But I just think this was 4 days. It was a long time. And if this was in the middle of winter, I've got some concerns because I was trying to go door to door. And I just think that if we had a phone number where people could call and just get the recording, the outages are first going to be back downtown, and then it's going to be at this section and whatever, and this is the number to call if you're afraid and you need the police to stop by. Just a recorded message that could just be pasted on someone's landline phone or their flip phone, so people could call instead of assuming that people have the technology to get on Facebook and see what's going on. And so I just think that, I'm sure the mayor has lots of great suggestions that are much better than mine, but these are just a few things, and that is my request to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor O'Hara. Councilor Blank. Okay, we'll get back to you. Okay. How about Sean?
I'd like to try to request to the mayor that she reaches out to the Clean City Commission and the Rose Baker Senior Center to try to get them together and work on a way to help educate the elderly in the city on ways that they can stockpile and work with reusable bags.
Councilor Orlando.
Request to the mayor that the DPW put some kind of barrier in the old entrance from the Oval to Clark Cemetery, which is very steep and dangerous. Now that the DPW has done a beautiful job of creating a new access from the Oval, which is much safer, a steadier decline, beautifully done with nice fieldstone and everything. I want to applaud them for that, but to ask that the old entrance, which is extremely dangerous now because it's even steeper than it used to be cut off and fenced in with some kind of barrier, whether they erect a wooden one or fill it in with more fencing is definitely needed over there. Thank you.
Councilor Cox.
I would like to request that the mayor, through the animal control, to do more enforcement at the city playgrounds, cemeteries, and schools. It's been my understanding, it's reported to me today that people are walking their dogs at Beeman and not picking up after them, and it's a big issue. So as kids are walking to school from the neighborhood, they're stepping in poop constantly, unfortunately. So, and I also want to remind everybody on tomorrow night is the Sawyer Free Awards or the Medal Awards at 7 p.m. And there's also a feasibility meeting for the possibly new school at West Parish on Thursday night. And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Councilor Lundberg.
I would just like to commend the city clerk and her staff and all of the people who she recruited for working at the polls on Election Day. They did a tremendous job. That's a long, long day. And for those of us who were around the polls, they were in good spirits and did a great job. So thank you, Joanne.
Councilor Blank.
All right, so we have an opening on the Animal Advisory Committee, and we've had it for a while, so I'd like to see that position filled. Also, I've asked Mike Hale to repair the fence that divides Gloucester Avenue from Maplewood Avenue up to Bomco, and the 128 extension has fallen over. I know it's a access point for animals to kind of get in and out of there, and it's just dangerous that if there was somebody pet that got onto the extension. Not only is it dangerous for the pet, but it's dangerous for the motorist. So if we can have that repaired. Yes. No, I'm requesting it through the mayor. Mass DOT would have to do it.
Definitely.
It would have to be a request. Well, it would have to
Extension
be,
one is a state.
yeah. I don't know. But anyway, it's fallen over, so it's just dangerous. And I guess that, also, if we can have the police department put up the radar device on Maplewood Avenue between Cleveland Street and Gloucester Avenue. I got a lot of complaints about speeding. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot to add something. So I actually saw right in front of my office building at the Angle Street entrance to Western Avenue and St. Peter's Square, I saw a little kid almost get hit by a car, because what's happening is, because the sidewalk sort of cuts off and the crosswalk is really kind of long in that section, you don't really see around the building to who's coming across the street. So like someone to take a look at what can be done to either extend that sidewalk a little further, or maybe put some kind of a device up to warn drivers that there may be pedestrians entering or something. Just it's the entrance to downtown. It's a really high traffic street. It's a small street, but you end up seeing at the end when it's busy, some people peeling off to the right to take a right to try to create 2 lanes, and it's a hazard for pedestrians. So, like, if the request to the mayor to take a look at potentially extending the sidewalk or painting something or some kind of fix so that people know the pedestrians entering here. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? All right, does every counselor have a bag? He's the... Okay. All right, we're all celebrating the bags. We're going to lead the charge. I had the representatives from the Middle Street Walk come into the store, and because of our historic vote, they felt that we should have some bags. And it just happens that they promote the Middle Street Walk. And I'm just going to read their little flyer. And it's Saturday, December 9th, and it's 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Special light show at City Hall from 4 to 8 p.m. Free events all day include bell ringers, kids' activities, architectural tours, craft fair with videos and books, snack bar, breakfast and lunch, gingerbread houses, music and concerts, wreaths and greenery, baked goods, and the Santa, trolley rides, and historic tours. Events ring in at 10 a.m. at Gloucester City Hall and close at 4:30 with the Lobster Pot tree lighting, and a special light show at City Hall from 4 to 4 p.m. There's a website, and you can check with them, middlestreetwalk.org. They're working very hard with a lot of the groups that are on Middle Street, and it should be a fun event. And I certainly want to thank them for the bags and bringing them in at a real appropriate time. The other item I want to say is about the Christmas parade. It's coming together on November 26th, which is a Sunday after Thanksgiving. We are organizing, and where the kickoff is at 3 o'clock at the State Fish Pier. The organization is looking for marchers. We're looking for anybody that wants to put a musical team together for the float. The only requirement is that it has to be holiday themed. And it'll end up at the Kent Circle, which is where the official Christmas tree lighting happens. As always, like any event, it costs money. The bands cost money. So anybody that wants to do a donation to help the Christmas parade, and what it is, it's a children's parade, and it's children's themes, and it's just a joy to see the smiles on their faces. So I welcome everybody to come. I'll put that on your calendar. It's not the Macy's parade, but it's much more fun than that one. So November 26th. Is there anything else? Yep, we're gonna.
So I just wanted to mention that our annual report is due on Friday. So I'm suggesting that Jen Holgram, Counselor-elect, takes a picture of our council so we can be in the annual report.
All right. I'll adjourn and we can just stand, clean up in front.